Nice to see you. Turn to somebody near to you and say, I'm so glad that I'm me. Now say to the same person, I'm so glad that I'm not you. If you'd been near that nurse in that corridor that time, you'd have heard what she said. 3 days before, I got nicked in town. It was a Friday. I always got nicked on a Friday, which meant no bail till Monday. I was an addict, so you can imagine by the time I got bail, I wasn't feeling well. Ow, my back's aching. Ouch, my legs are killing me. Man, I need to get some drugs, sharpish, to get straight. I had 25 quid to my name. I'd put this in my Ben Sherman shirt pocket that was underneath my jumper. Back then, this would get you a weighed 1/4 of a gram of heroin. So I walked into Hume and I went round to Ratty's, one of the dealers, to score. If you spotted Ratty in Tesco, you couldn't stop yourself from looking twice. At least twice. He had a cross tattooed between his eyes. And he looked like Gandalf with a shell suit on. Ratty, it's Barry. He opened the door. Come in, Baz. Mate, have you got any gear? How much do you want? 1/4. I have, but I've not got that much. I've only got about 1/8. I'm waiting for some coming. You can have that if you want, though. It's really strong. Okay, then. I'll have that. I'll come back for the rest later. So I got the gear off him, went into his bedroom and took it, and everything went black. Then when I opened my eyes, everything was all blur, and I was dead dizzy. Then as I came round, I realised that I was laid on my back on a bed, and I was being rushed down a hospital corridor. The lights on the ceiling were bolting past me. Then that nurse's face appeared, looking down at me. She had blue eyes and red lipstick on. She looked dead worried. Barry, you came in here hours ago. You were DOA. The paramedics found you in a phone box, dead. Do you know what I did when that bed stopped? Signed myself out. Then I went back out to Ratty's to get the rest of my gear. How crazy is that? But this is where I'd found myself right in the middle of this struggle. What's been your struggle? It might look like that. But I know for most of you, it doesn't. Because you've been down another pathway. So that's where you've had yours. But we've all found ourselves in the middle of a struggle somewhere along the line, though, haven't we? So what can we learn from that place? Let's pay a visit and take a look. For starters, the middle of a struggle can be the foreshadow to your trade. Do you like to watch films? I know I do. Especially when we were locked down on Saturdays. Good old Netflix, eh? Even if you don't, I'm sure you've seen at least one James Bond film. Come on, confession time. There's always a scene where James Bond meets Q to get his gadgets, isn't there? Then later in the film, you get to see him use them, usually in the best bits. This is what storytellers of all kinds, not just filmmakers, call foreshadowing. Something goes in there for a moment, then it's brought back later on. It's done with objects, characters, lines of dialogue. And this is like how it can be with us, because sometimes the experience we gain from the struggles we go through can end up being used later on our journey. So the middle of a struggle can be the foreshadow to your trade. Kevin's Scottish. He's proper chirpy with a scar on his left cheek. I can't really tell you what town he's from, just in case you're from Falkirk. Kev was into drugs and gambling until God got busy. He came up to me once after I finished speaking at Victory Outreach in Manchester. He was carrying a checkbook. Do you remember them? If you'd been at the back near that table with my books on, you'd have heard us. Barry, we want to make a donation out to the work that you're doing. Who do we make a check out to? Nice one, Kev. Make it out to Proclaim Trust. Anyway, why are you doing that? Are you the treasurer here? Well, kind of. I'm the accountant. Kev, have you always been good with numbers, mate? No, not really. I learnt about them in the bookies. See, the middle of a struggle can be the foreshadow to your trade. Paul killed Christians. He ended up teaching them. Speaking from his own experience in the Bible, he said, for we know that God causes all things to work together for good for those that know him. Think about your struggle and everything that's taken you through. Listen, that struggle for you could be your greatest asset. Because God can take the experience that you gain from it and he can use it later on your journey. See, the middle of a struggle can be the foreshadow to your trade. In that corridor that time, the worried-looking nurse was looking down at me. Barry, you were DOA. The paramedics found you in a phone box dead. The middle of a struggle can be the foreshadow to your trade. And apart from that, the middle of a struggle doesn't have to be a permanent location. Raise your hand if you're in the room, if you remember tape cassettes. For those of you who've not raised your hand, a tape cassette is what we stored music on before Spotify. Do you know, not so long back, I found some house music and techno ones. Ones that I'd recorded in my flat in Hume when I had my little studio set up. If you'd have popped round for a visit, you'd have seen the mixer, the drum machine and the synth, and you'd have seen that Roland TB303. That's what makes the acid sound in acid house and acid techno. Some of you know that waka wow, squidgy, waka wow wow sound. It was a decent setup. And I'd sit there for weeks, mesmerized. Looked like a mad music professor in a trance, speeding off my head. So you can see why I was proper chuffed when I found these tapes. One of them is called Up Tempo. You can't really call it a mixtape because it's just one long track. Man, you should hear it, bombing it along. Some of you know that electronic dance tracks have structures with intros, build-ups, breaks, and outros. Well, this one doesn't have any structure. It's just one long, continuous drum machine beat with random manic breaks kicking off, lasting ages, synced up to that synthesizer and that Roland TB303. 45 minutes long. Non-stop, the whole side of a cassette tape. Sounds like an hyperactive robot playing around with an Hoover and a dentist drill. Thing is, when I recorded this, I must have thought it sounded really good. Otherwise, I wouldn't have kept the tape. Can you imagine what the hundreds of others that I recorded sounded like? The ones that I didn't keep. This is where I was at. But I'm not in the same place now, though, because God got busy. See, the middle of a struggle doesn't have to be a permanent location. David in the Bible, he often found himself in the middle of some sort of struggle. But he knew how to get through them. He said that God is my shelter and my strength and always ready to help in times of trouble. Are you in the middle of something? Are you in that place right now? Listen, you don't need to stay there because God's ready to help. He can get busy in your situation, but you need to give him consent. Listen, the middle of a struggle doesn't have to be a permanent location. In that corridor that time, the worried-looking nurse was looking down at me. Barry, you were DOA. The paramedics found you in a phone box, dead. The middle of a struggle can be the foreshadow to your trade. The middle of a struggle doesn't have to be a permanent location. And the middle of a struggle is a place where the unexpected can happen. If you met Jamie You probably recognise him from Crime Watchers Most Wanted. He's the kind of guy that would never hit a man with glasses, but he would hit him with a baseball bat. I first met him when he was doing a 4-year prison sentence. One time, I was speaking at this community event, and he was there, so I sat at the same table as him. Good to see you, mate. Good to see you, Baz. When did you get out? I got out about 3 months ago. I got my parole. Sorted. How have you been doing anyway? I've been doing really good, thanks, Baz. I feel like I've finally started to sort my life out. Nice one. How did that come about? It was in that chapel that time. Do you know when I met you? You didn't know it, but at the start, I was only there thinking I was going to be buying some drugs for one of the lads on another wing. I wasn't there to listen to you. Thank you very much. But I think the big man upstairs had something else lined up. Because then you said something that resonated with me. And it was that set me off on this path, Baz. It was mental. It just came right out of the blue. See, the middle of a struggle is a place where the unexpected can happen. Isaiah from Bible Times tells us that God's thoughts are not our thoughts, and neither are God's ways our ways. See, God sometimes actions the unexpected, and he often does it when we're in the middle of a struggle. What about you? What was you thinking at the start of this? Have I said something that's resonated with you? Listen, it could be that God's got something lined up for you that's out of the blue. Same as Jamie, who knows. See, the middle of a struggle is a place where the unexpected can happen. In that corridor that time, the worried-looking nurse was looking down at me. Barry, you were DOA. The paramedics found you in a phone box, dead. The middle of a struggle can be the foreshadow to your trade. The middle of a struggle doesn't have to be a permanent location. The middle of a struggle is a place where the unexpected can happen. And to top those off, the middle of a struggle is a place where you can start to rewrite your headlines. You should have seen Lisa's face when I told her what had happened. Lisa had long blonde hair and blue eyes, and she had a nose pierced. That was before body piercing got popular. We were together for a decade. A mad decade that was as well. In fact, you can read more about our antics in my book, Once an Addict, and it just so happens that there's some outside there. We started a project when my book came out in 2007 to give a copy of Once an Addict to every prisoner in the UK. Post-COVID, there's 76,000 prisoners behind bars in the UK. We've sent 50,000 copies of my book, Once an Addict, into prisons. 50,000. And there's one small way that you can support that, just a small way. For every one copy of Once an Addict you buy, we then send 2 into prisons for free. So you're buying 3. So you're paying for 2 to go into prisons when you buy 1. And there's some of the bits on the table out there. DVDs and CDs, all the proceeds that come in through that go into the charities that I run, of course, but that is earmarked for the work we do in jails because we don't get a lot of funding for our prisons work. The last pad that me and Lisa had before we split was on a council estate called Darnhill. Our offices are just a few minutes away, so I still drive through the estate. Once, I was driving up the bottom road, and there was someone on the other side walking up the path. Do you know, from behind, that looks like Lisa's walk. Do you know when you know somebody really well? That is Lisa. So I pulled the car up to the curb, dead slow behind her, and opened my window. Lisa, is that you, Barry? Yeah, love. Well, blankety blank, blankety blank, blankety blank. Blankety blank, blank. Fancy seeing you. How long's it been now? Must be going on 15 years, eh, Baz? Yeah, something like that, Lise. I knew you'd come back, though. Do you want to come round to mine for a brew? Yeah, go on then, get in. She gets in. Just drive up here. I live down that cul-de-sac now, at the end near the bus stop. You should have seen her when we got to her street. She was on a mission. It's great living down here, Barry. You can get your weed from the house there. You can get speed from this house over here. You can get your brown from them flats just down there. She was like a drugstore guide. On crack. Because she thought I'd come back. Her flat was on the first floor in this little block. If you'd been there, you'd have seen her show me round. Here's the kitchen, Barry, that the council's just done up. Look at them brand new worktops. Here's me bathroom, Baz. Look at that purple toilet seat that I've just bought. There's the bedroom, Barry. There's the bed and the bedroom. Here's the living room. Sit down, Baz. We got chatting about old times. She starts to make a spliff. Do you remember when I used to come and visit you in prison? Do you remember when I started to hear those voices? Do you remember when we lived in that squat opposite the Russell Club in Moss Side that had a tree trunk in the living room? And do you remember when you got snatched that Christmas, allegedly? When we were skint and you came back with that leather knife safe bag and you got all the knives out of the kitchen drawer and you were trying to open it, you kept breaking them. And then when you opened it, we saw all that money. What a Christmas that was. Then she lit the spliff. Like a bunch of skunks just started a spray fight. Smelled good and all. We carried on with our trip down memory lane. And she goes, yeah, Baz. No, you're all right, love. I don't smoke anymore. What do you mean you don't smoke? No, I stopped. I don't even smoke cigs. What, you? Yeah. Why did you stop? I stopped when I become a Christian. What, you a blankety blank, 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 blank Christian? Yeah, Lise. How did that happen? Well, it wasn't long after we split. I got invited to church, so I went. And I thought they were all basket cases. But then at the end, this guy prayed for me, and I had a light bulb moment. And then the voices went. I came off the drugs. I went to Bible college. I set up a charity. I got married. I wrote a book that's now a bestseller. That look on her face when I told her was priceless. Who'd have thought? You doing all that? You're in such a bad place. Good on you. Are you sure you don't want some of this though, Baz? See, the middle of a struggle is a place where you can start to rewrite your headlines. Do you need to start to rewrite yours? Do you want to? Listen, 2,000 years ago, 2,000 miles away, God, the creator of this universe, became a man. His name is Jesus. Jesus is God with skin on. And he came to this earth. And he was tempted just like we get tempted, but he resisted temptation. Then at the age of 33, he allowed himself to be nailed to a cross. He found himself in the middle of a struggle. He was in that place for you, though, because he died on that cross to pay the price for your faults, for your flaws, and for your failures. He died on that cross so that he can wipe your slate clean and to give you the option to start rewriting your headlines. That guy in the Bible, David, he said this as well. God rewrote the text of my life when I opened the door of my heart to him. You see, when you give God consent to come in, he gets busy. He gets his pen out and he starts to rewrite your headlines. See, the middle of a struggle is a place where you can start to rewrite your headlines, but you need to give him consent to come in, because that's when he gets busy. A mate of mine got his car broken into. Whoever did it used the device to relay this signal from his car key fob to another device that was used to open his door. It's a method that's been given the term relay theft. Have you heard of it? Interesting. Car thieves have come a long way since my day. I just used a brick. Or an automatic centre punch. Do you know God will never try to get through your door using a device like that? In fact, he tells us his method in his instruction book, the Bible. He says, I stand at the door and knock. If anybody hears me and opens the door, I will come in. You see, God is not a relay thief, because he stands and he knocks and he knocks and he knocks and he waits for you to open the door. He waits for you to give him consent to come in. And when you give him consent to come in, he gets his pen out and he starts to rewrite your headlines. See, the middle of a struggle is a place where you can start to rewrite your headlines. In that corridor that time, the worried-looking nurse was looking down at me. Barry, you were DOA. The paramedics found you in a phone box, dead. I didn't tell you how I ended up in that phone box, did I? Let's wrap this up now back at Ratty's flat and find out. That night I'd signed myself out. Then I went back to Ratty's to get the rest of my gear. Ratty, it's Barry. You should have seen how mad he was when he opened the door. He was so angry. That cross between his eyes was spread across his face. What do you want? I've come to get the rest of my gear. You cheeky blankety blank, 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 blank. What do you mean? Well, when you came round here before, you didn't have any money. Of course I did, Ratty. No, you didn't. I did. It was here in my shirt pocket. I'd put it in there earlier. Oh, a side note. Remember at the beginning, I said I put the 25 quid into my Ben Sherman shirt pocket underneath my jumper. Now, I'm pulling it out again. Foreshadowing. And actually, this reminds me that the place where I was at then was the foreshadow to my trade. That wasn't in there before. It was, right? No, it wasn't, because me and Junkie Jerry from upstairs searched you. Before we carried you down to the phone box and left you there after you'd OD'd. It was, right? You still didn't believe me. So I kept the 25 quid and I went somewhere else to score. The middle of a struggle. This was me in mine. And it's a place where we've all been. If you're in the room, please stand. If you're watching online, keep watching. Listen up. Listen up. Listen up. Right now, God is stood outside your life. He's standing and waiting for you to open your door. He's waiting for you to give him consent to come in so that he can get busy rewriting your headlines. What are you going to do? Whether you're watching online or whether you're in the room, I'm going to pray a prayer. I'm going to invite two groups of people to pray this prayer. The first group are those people, you've never prayed a prayer, you've never given God consent to come in. It could be that you've prayed crisis prayers. I've prayed tons of those. God, give me bail. This is the last time. Yeah, I know I said that the last time, but this really, nothing on with crisis prayers, by the way. It could be that you've got a little belief in God. It could be that you've been asking questions over the last couple of years. Is there a God? It could be that you're searching for God. It could be that you've not thought about God until today. Listen, God is stood outside your door and he wants to come in. What are you going to do? So the first group of people, whether you're watching online or in the room, if you've not prayed a prayer, you've not given God consent to come in, you're going to pray this prayer. He's going to step in. He's going to get out his pen and he's going to start to rewrite your headlines. The second group of people are those people, you've prayed some kind of prayer in the past and you've started your Christian journey. But you know, for whatever reason, right now, you're not cutting it. Listen, there's no condemnation for you, by the way. We're under grace. Isn't it a good job? Because this room would be empty if we wasn't. If you're part of that second group, pray this prayer. Get back on track. God will forgive and forget. And then you can just crack on with the rest of your journey as you leave this place. So that's whether you're watching online or whether you're in the room. And if you're in the room, everybody else, you make up the third group. Because you're going to pray it to encourage the first group and the second group. Are we ready? All three groups, repeat after me, phrase by phrase. Dear God, I come to you today and I admit that I'm not perfect. God, I ask that you forgive me for my faults, for my flaws, and for my failures. God, I ask that you wipe my slate clean, because right now I'm opening my door and I'm giving you consent to come in. And God, I ask that you pick up your pen and that you start to rewrite my headlines. While our heads are bowed like this, if you're in the room and you've prayed that prayer, you're part of the first group or the second group. Can you raise your hand so I can see it? Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. You're part of the first group. The second group, you're part of the first group. You've prayed that prayer. Put your hands up so I can see it. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Put your hands down. There's more people in this room prayed that prayer and you're part of the first group and the second group. There's 4 people already. You don't need to raise your hand again, but I'm going to count down 10 seconds. I'm going to say this. Park your pride outside. Pride can stop you connecting with God. So I'm going to count down 10 seconds, and the rest of you who've prayed that prayer, you're part of the first group or the second group. I'm going to invite you to raise your hand so I can see it. The 4 of you don't need to raise them again. Anybody else? 10. Raise your hand so I can see it. Another 1, another 2. Raise your hand so I can see it. Another 3. Anybody else as I count down? 9. Anybody else? 8. 7. Anybody else? We've got you 2 over here. Thank you very much. 6. Anybody else? Park your pride outside. 5. 4. Anybody else? Raise your hand so I can see it. You're part of the first group or the second group. There's 9 people altogether. Anybody else as I count down? 4. 3. Anybody else? 2. Another one here. Fantastic. That's 10 altogether. Wonderful. Anybody else? 2. Anybody else? 1. There's 10 people prayed that prayer in this room. If you're watching online and you've prayed that prayer and you're part of the first group or the second group, just put in the comment box or the chat and just put, I prayed. And someone will be in contact with you. Those 10 people who's raised your hands, I'm going to count to 3. On the point of 3, you're going to leave your seats. You're going to walk through that door. Someone's going to stand with you. They're going to give you a booklet. They're going to give you some information. But it's important that you go on the point of 3. If you didn't raise your hand, you can still go. You're going to go through that door. Are we ready? 1, 2, 3. You go now as quickly as you can. Through that door. Yeah, through that door. Fantastic. Wonderful.